Hi, my name's Lockie. I'm a private investigator. In this video, I'm going to talk about the private investigations industry and explain what private investigators do. This video is really for anyone with any level of interest in private investigations. Could be for someone who wants to engage a private investigator but doesn't really know much about the process. Could be someone who just has an abstract interest in the industry for whatever reason. Could be for someone who is interested in becoming a private investigator, or it could be for some other reason. The first question to answer is, what is a private investigator? A private investigator is a person who's entitled to conduct a private investigation. Usually the definition for private investigation is found in legislation in whatever jurisdiction you're in. Basically, it boils down to this. A private investigator is a person who's entitled to conduct an investigation on behalf of a client. So a client, a business, or a person, or a government agency of some description hires a private investigator because this entity or person wants to investigate a third party. So a person or an organization or an incident or a set of facts. So the investigator is the conduit for the client to learn more about something else. In order to act as a private investigator, in most jurisdictions, you have to have a license. Not all, but most. In certain jurisdictions, private investigators are banned. They're not entitled to operate. To my knowledge, private investigators are lawful in all Western jurisdictions. So when a private investigator is acting for a client and seeking to learn more about a person or an incident or a set of facts or an organization, what is actually involved? Well, that's a relatively simple question to answer. An investigator in his or her role as an investigator ultimately does one thing, and that is endeavors to uncover evidence. When I say evidence, you probably think of court, and sometimes the evidence that a private investigator uncovers is for court purposes or for a legal settlement or dispute. In other circumstances, however, the evidence that a private investigator uncovers is not necessarily for court. It's just for the peace of mind of the client. It could just be a personal inquiry in relation to a past relationship or something like that, and there will be nothing that goes before the court in relation to that inquiry. Regardless of the circumstances, a professional investigator will approach the matter in the same way, and that is endeavoring to uncover objective evidence that could stand the test of the court process if that's what's required. The next question is, what is evidence? Well, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice, but as a private investigator, my understanding of evidence is as follows. Usually evidence comes in one of three forms. Firstly, testimonial evidence. So in court, that's a person giving evidence in the court, speaking, answering questions from one of the lawyers representing one of the parties involved. Secondly, a record of some description, a business record, a document, a transcript, a hard drive report, something that is adduced into evidence as a record of something else. Thirdly, actual evidence like a knife with blood or a piece of hair found at a crime scene. Those three categories make up most evidence. What an investigator is endeavoring to do for the client that they're acting for is uncover one of those three forms of evidence with respect to the subject of the investigation, being a person or an organization, or as we said, an incident or a set of facts or something like that. In practical terms, what an investigator is actually trying to do is uncover the truth. Usually a client has a suspicion or wants some specific information with respect to the subject. So the investigator is trying to uncover that information, that truth. That could be, for example, where a person lives. It could be whether a person is guilty of a criminal offense historically. It could be whether a person is faking an injury or cheating on their partner. It could be whether an employee is breaching a work or employment contract. It could be whether someone is doing something untoward on a computer that they shouldn't be doing. There are many circumstances in which evidence is needed, as we said, whether for court or for peace of mind. The tools available to an investigator to uncover evidence usually come in a few different forms. Firstly, you might have heard the term OSINT, which is a shortened version of open source intelligence. What that refers to is information that is available to the investigator by searching on the web or searching databases. So if an investigator is endeavoring to locate a person or do a background check, typically they will do what is referred to as OSINT work. So they will search the internet under the name of the person, they'll search databases, they'll make associated inquiries, and they may come up with a whole raft of information in relation to that subject. Another form of evidence that's commonly uncovered by investigators in the course of an investigation is what's referred to as HUMINT, or human intelligence. This is information that is uncovered by a person either watching a subject, interviewing a subject, or tricking a subject into revealing information. In the jurisdiction in which I'm based, Australia, the most common form of investigations that are conducted are surveillance investigations. This is a form of HUMINT. This involves a surveillance investigator in his or her vehicle, or sometimes on foot, endeavoring to discreetly follow and document the movements of a subject person. Covert video is taken wherever possible, and a report is submitted based on the subject person's movements and activities. This is commonly employed in insurance investigations where a subject person has made certain types of representations about his or her capabilities, mental or physical. If a client, such as an insurer, believes that a subject person is misrepresenting his or her capabilities, whether mental or physical, they might hire a private investigator to place the subject person under surveillance. That surveillance might reveal more about the subject's capabilities. Similarly, a client might ask an investigator to conduct an interview with the subject person. This is typically referred to as a circumstances or a factual investigation. In a factual investigation, a factual investigator asks a subject person questions about whatever is at issue. The factual investigator may also conduct interviews with other persons to endeavour to learn more about the circumstances. Other persons might include witnesses to an incident, associates of the subject, or other persons. Depending on the jurisdiction, there might be other forms of investigation that are open to an investigator. For example, they might be entitled to conduct some form of signal intelligence, SIGINT, that can be intercepting communications on a computer or on a device. Often that is prohibited by law, however, so it's always important to consult a lawyer in circumstances where that kind of thing is contemplated. Depending on the private investigation firm that you approach, you may also have available to you other services such as digital forensics or handwriting forensics or other services. A forensic expert is a person who's accepted at the court level as an expert in that particular field. A court will always prefer the evidence of a forensic expert over a person who is not an expert, such as a layperson. So if you need evidence relating to a digital matter, for example, if you need to prove what information was stored on a computer at a particular point in time, then you really need a digital forensic expert to provide evidence in relation to that. There are a very, very broad range of circumstances in which clients request assistance from private investigators. Whatever the circumstances are, if you believe that some kind of evidence would be of assistance to you, whether for your peace of mind or for court purposes, it's worthwhile contacting a broad-based investigation firm and seeing if they're able to help. If you're not comfortable that your means of communication is safe, then use a payphone or use a friend or a relative's phone, ensuring your phone and digital devices are not within reach. In a worst-case scenario, your phone or your digital devices could be used as listening devices. It's important that you provide all relevant details to an investigator. In an investigation, by definition, you're dealing with the unknown. So it's important at the outset to clarify precisely what is known, what information you have, when it was known to be current, and how it can help the investigation. The best way you can assist the investigator to assist you is to provide everything that you know that you feel is relevant. If the investigator then believes that there is a prospect that the evidence you seek could be uncovered, then he or she will quote you and provide you with a proposal. Always get a proposal in writing so it's clear what the responsibilities of the investigator are. If you want to make sure that you get a report, ensure that's included in your contract with the investigator. If you have questions about the process, ensure you put those to the investigator so that you can be clear about what's going to be involved in an investigation. It's almost always impossible for an investigator to guarantee a particular outcome. In any investigation, an investigator is dealing with the unknown and, like you, endeavoring to uncover the truth. The process of uncovering the truth involves gathering as much information as possible, treating that information objectively, cross-referencing the information, and then making determinations about the relevance of that information. Don't do anything that could compromise an investigation. For example, don't try to investigate a matter yourself. Whatever your circumstances, it's worthwhile getting in touch with a private investigator if the thought occurs to you. If you're in a situation where you need some kind of information, evidence, intelligence, or proof, then it's important that you contact an investigator. An investigator can advise you about what's possible in the situation and give you pointers about how to go about getting the evidence. Sometimes you might be able to gather the evidence yourself, but usually you'll need the assistance of a licensed and experienced professional. If you decide you don't need an investigator, then at least you'll know you've examined that avenue of inquiry. Investigators are able sometimes to achieve incredible results. Personally, I've been involved in cases that have reached the Supreme Court of New South Wales. I'm proud of the help that I've been able to offer clients and grateful for the assistance of team members and colleagues who have assisted greatly in the provision of evidence over the years. When you're in doubt, contact an investigator because they're the experts at uncovering the truth and helping you to live with a little bit more certainty.